The series begins with Jake, who is in a puppet and doll fair. He sees a strange-looking doll that he likes, and decides to buy it. Then he returns home. There, he enters his room, which is still full of dolls and doma, broken and carved in the form of cascades. He begins to disassemble the new doll, but it breaks apart with difficulty. So he brings the scalpel to remove it, and he completes his petition, but suddenly his father returns from work. So, Jake asks him to say his opinion about the masala that he is doing. But it turns out that his father is annoyed with what he is doing and tells him to work any other job, because art is just a hobby, but it's not a style, so he annoys Jake and tells him that his mother was an artist like him, so the father gets angry and goes outside the room, and suddenly, the world speaks and says that her name is Chucky, and she will be his friend forever. And Jake is very surprised that she speaks alone, and he puts it in the cupboard. And he walks, and at night, Jake's uncle, his wife, and their son, Junior, come. It appears that the relationship between the two families is very tense. This is because Jake's father is poor, and he works a simple job, unlike his uncle who is very rich, and he is trying to offer his brother that he works with him, but Jake's father refuses and tells him that he doesn't need any help from him, and then with Jake and Beatrick on the puppets he is making and telling him to confess to his family that he is Shaz. Jake's father becomes angry and defends his son. She begs Junior's mother to go to the bathroom. On her way, she invades Jake's room. And you see the tassel that he treats from the brides. Then you make a call to an unknown person. She asks him to meet her on the next day. Suddenly, you hear a sound coming from the cupboard, so you open it. And when you meet the bride, you will be relieved. But then the cat bounces on it, and it gets very clogged. And you know it was just the sound of the cat. And then graduate. After dinner, Jake's father keeps drinking a lot. Suddenly, he enters Jake's room and breaks all the puppets he has with anger. Jake collapses as he sees his dream being destroyed before his eyes, and on the second day Jake goes to school. There he sees Devin, who is still working, but broadcasts on the radio about the crime in the city, and he says that the crime rate has increased in the last 10 years by 25%, and that the last heinous crime that happened was because the serial killer Charles Wally killed an entire family. In town, Jake stays with bride Chucky, and this is after he decided to sell it so that his father would not be upset, and his classmates see him at school and bully him. And Alexis deals with him. She is his cousin's girlfriend rudely because he is poor, and she takes pictures of him with the bride in order to collect donations for him from the internet, and Jake cannot defend himself and enters his class, and there he makes the doll sit beside him, and he is supposed to do an anatomy of a frog in a certain way, but Jake still has a phobia of blood. And he can't help but open a small part of the frog, and quickly turns around his face, then comes back and finds the frog open in a strange way. And he is not the one who did this, and suddenly messages come for all the students. They look at Jake while they laugh, and they stay and watch a picture of Jake with the bride. The school gets angry and kicks them out of the classroom and demands that she talk to Alexei. But before he comes out, he asks the school to keep the bride until he sells her, and she agrees. And then the school talks to Alexei, and whoever treats him rudely, the school decides to call the principal. Suddenly, the doll Chucky stands in front of Alexei, terrifyingly close to her. Alexei is very afraid, and you still want to run away. But suddenly the school and the principal come. Alexei tells them she's sorry, and she erases the pictures. She quickly exits, terrified. After that, the students attend the talent show, and Divno plays the piano, and after Alexei graduates, the rest of the show is presented. But she decides to bully Jake with cacophony and talks about his financial condition. Suddenly a voice emerges from the hall saying that she is supposed to speak at her own pace. And it blooms that it is the same as Chucky's bride, and the one who calls Jake to let her talk into the mic. And everyone thinks that Jake is the one talking. And I look forward to the Domia mobile Alexei. And what blooms in him is that she is cheating on Junior. And it's on porn sites. And you expose it in front of everyone. And then Jake comes home. And there he fights with his father, who attacks him. And he still wants to hit him. But he leaves him, so he goes outside and leaves with his father, and the father returns to his place, and he finds that all of his drink is drunk, and suddenly the light turns off, so the father goes down to the cellar to fix it, but suddenly it blooms, and the one who throws the remains of the drink she drank on the electric wires, and the reason remains that the father electrocuted and dies, and the police come and Jake's uncle takes him home and decides that he prefers to live with him, and Jake enters his new room and asks the doll is talking and admitting that she is the one who killed the cat. As for his father, they both killed him together, but Jake tells her that he did not want to kill him and that he was a good father before his mother died, but Chucky tells him that his father was a stupid man and must be killed, and now it's Alexi's turn. Jake is shocked and researches the world, Chucky, and sees children photographed with her after they were accused of more than one murder, and he knows that Chucky is the same as Charles, the famous serial killer, and on the second day Junior goes with school Jake. There, Jake gives condolences to the students, and they will be captivated by what happened with his father, and this is except for Alexi, who prefers to bully him. Junior gets annoyed with her, and he tells her that the one who died will be his uncle. In a corridor, Jake meets Oliver, who invites him to a Halloween party at his house. They thank Jake and say he will think. Then he meets Defang, who tries to comfort him, and he asks him to come to the party at night. Meanwhile, Charles or Chucky is left alone in the house with the cleaning staff. Suddenly, you find the worker. The knife is incomplete. The dishwasher opens, which contains a large number of knives. Suddenly, he comes behind her and slashes her with knives that are inserted into her neck, and the reason for her death, and the school day ends, and he returns home, and there they see the cleaning lady dead, and they inform the police. Police presence. Jake is in 2 different murders, and it remains a strange cosmic coincidence for them. The detective tries to inquire from Junior's father and mother about Jack and Junior's actions. It appears that she suspects that Jack is involved in the murders that are taking place. And this is in case they consider the death of the father as an intentional crime. Junior's mother is very afraid of Jake. She suspects that it was because of the violence he was exposed to from his father. I might turn into a criminal. But Junior's father tells her that it is impossible, and he is sure that his brother was not so violent. Junior and Jake hear them from the upstairs. He annoys Jake very much and enters. So Junior enters his room, opens his laptop, and finds that Jake was looking for Alexi's account, and Jake comes to see him and asks him to go outside, and he looks at Chucky and knows that he was the one who was looking for Alexi's account, and at night he comes with him to the party. But Jake decides not to go, and this in order to prevent from killing Alexei, and Junior goes alone. Suddenly, Chucky disappears. Jake is looking for him everywhere, and he knows he's gone to the party, and he appears walking in the street wearing a mask. He bakes his mouth, and this is so that no one knows that he is not a real child, and he asks on the streets for the address of the party. He knows a woman who distributes the address, and in return, she holds an apple with a knife in it, because the first time she eats it, she gets naked, and he enters the party. And there she sees Alexis' little sister, who she loves very much, and she plays with him. And he talks to her, and he tells her that he will kill her sister today, and at this time, Junior arrives to the party, and he sits with Alexis in a room alone and blooms. From under the bed, he is holding the knife and trying to kill Alexi, but she moves a lot on the bed, and on the last piece someone else enters the room, and the chair gets up from its place and goes outside, and Jake arrives at the party and there Devin sees him trying to figure out what's bothering him. He tells him that it is impossible to believe him, and he asks him to find Chucky, and he keeps looking for her everywhere until suddenly the dress appears in the middle of the party, dressed like Jake's father, and I am glad that she is electrocuted as he died, and Jake is shocked. He sees Alexi bullying even his dead father, and he sees Chucky, so he takes him and goes outside the house while he is sad, and he returns home. There he tries to convince him that he must kill Alexei because she has crossed all borders, and that sometimes there are people in the world who have to die in order not to marry someone else. And Jake is convinced, and because of the hatred in his heart towards Alexei after what she did, actually he kills her. So in my hand is the knife while smiling an evil smile. and he asks him about the way he likes to be killed. On the second day, I had a check for Jake, instructing Bazai to plan a murder, and let him watch everything. Alexei moves until he finds the right opportunity to kill her. And Jake sees Alexei running, so he runs after her until they reach the place in the forest. Before he attacks her, he meets his cousin Junior, who is wearing the same clothes as Alexei, and they run at the same time, so he quickly hides the knife and walks away, and Junior brings Alexei home after they finish running. There, he tells her that she should apologize to Jake for what she did, and that this is not acceptable to him, and he walks away and leaves her, so she annoys Alexei and she enters the house. There she meets her little sister, who refuses to eat or drink. Unless you play with Chucky, Alex decides to apologize to Jake. Chuck asks him, you see him in his uncle's garage playing with knives. But in fact, he keeps beating to kill her. Alex enters the garage and apologizes to him for what happened, and she asks him for a doll for her little sister. But Jake totally refuses. He tries to kill her while she turns her back on him, but he can't. So she walks to the chair while she is upset and goes home. And Jake enters his house, and he tells what happened. He is a coward and he will have to work in his place as usual, and he tells him to take him home as I asked him, and this is to complete the task that he failed in. So he goes home with the doll in her hands. Caroline rejoices, and who is the very Alexei little sister with her, and you prefer to hug him and play with him. At night, she takes advantage of the absence of her father and mother and throws a party at her house. And all her friends come to school. Before the party starts, she lets her little sister sleep, and she puts her side, and then she goes out to enjoy her time with her friends. And in the room he says he will kill Alex, and he cuts a blanket with a knife and keeps an eye on Alex until the right opportunity comes to pass Oliver from the corridor in which I complain, so Chucky attacks him and kills him with a knife. Then he apologizes to him because he remembers Alexei, and after he kills him, he goes to the room where the chair is smoking, and suddenly he attacks her from her back and tries to strangle her with his knife, as if he is diversifying the ways of killing him, and you see Alexa as a bride who tries to strangle her and tries to resist, but suddenly the cigarette fire. She gets excited in the room, and no one in the house feels what is happening because of the loud music, and we go back to the past, Chucky and the gang, where there is a real killer. The story begins in the house where he lived with his father and mother, and who in the day stormed a serial killer. Chucky's father was killed before his eyes, so the mother hides with Charles in the closet, and the thug turns on them everywhere, and Charles keeps a small dagger with him, and the thug reaches their place and opens the cupboard, but suddenly he finds his mother murdered, and baby Charles with a knife in his hand, and he tells the thug that he wanted to help him, so the thug applauds him and tells him that he is proud of him, and he walks away. And we go back to the Alexei's house, which is completely burnt. A large number of students are severely burned, and she enters intensive care, and Jake goes to the hospital, and there he searches for Alexei, and discovers that she is still alive, and she tells him that his doll has a soul, and she tries to kill her, and that she does not believe that what she is saying is true, but it really happened, so Jake asks her about the location of the doll, so she tells him that the last time she saw him was in her room. I burn with the rest of the house. Jake tells her that they need to be sure, and they decide to go home together and sneak past the police. There, Alexei asks Jake why he left his doll and wants to kill her, so Jake confesses to her that he also wants to kill her because of the bullying she bullied him on, and that she is a supportive person, and that's why he was thinking of getting rid of her. Alexei gets shocked and turns back, and suddenly the staircase wall is broken and Alexei falls. But Jake catches her on the last piece. Suddenly, it blooms, and what encourages Jake is to kill Alexei, and that this is his right opportunity, but Jake tells him that he is not a killer like him, and he raises Alexei and cuts her. Suddenly one of the police enters and asks him to take him out of the house, and he meets the bride, so he takes her to Caroline, and Alexei turns to stop him, but he doesn't care about her words and tells her that her father is the one who asked him, so Jake and Alexei go to the hospital. There they searched for the policeman, but the female investigator came and asked them to talk to each other in private. Meanwhile, he keeps making sense on the internet about the doll and asks Alexei to talk privately, and Caroline stays alone in the intensive care unit, where the policeman arrives and puts the doll next to her. And he eats from the existing food. He throws a knife at him in the back. The policeman falls to the ground and is unable to move, and Chucky tells him that he hit him in the spinal cord, and that's why he's paralyzed, and then he collects a large number of syringes, and the policeman kills them. At this time, the investigator keeps asking about his relationship with every crime that happens, and this is because he is either present in a place, whether he or his puppet, the crime is present, so Jack tells her that he has nothing to do with anything. So the investigator presses him and asks him to tell her who is the reason. Before Jake utters a word, they hear the sound of the resuscitation machine, and who says that the patient died. They ran quickly toward Caroline's room. The nurse sees the respirator plug while she is paralyzed, so you put it down quickly. Suddenly you find a large amount of blood coming from under the bed. So you look at him and see the body of the policeman. And she screams from the ugliness of the scene. The detective is shocked that Jack has nothing to do with anything, and they see and Devin at the scene. And suddenly they see Chucky smiling at them, an evil smile, and we go back in time to the time when the police discovered the murder of the parents of the child, Charles, and then Charles is transferred to the orphanage, and he grows up and is responsible for the rest of the children in the house, and one day he talks. They have the story of Peter Pan, and he decides that he is the same Peter, that he has the children of his companions, and he takes them to the forest. And there he shows them the body of the bleeding and tells them that this is Captain Hope. After many murders, the police are finally able to kill him, but after he is still able to perform satanic rituals to fragment his soul and transfer it from the body of the body, and because at the time of his death, the game analyst was able to transfer his soul to the doll, and whoever buys it, there will be more than one murder in his presence. And until the owner of the doll decides to get rid of it, he can transfer part of his soul to the body of another human being, but the owner of the second body is able to return, but after he committed a lot of heinous murders, and we return to those who decide that they are searching for the world and getting rid of it in any way. The first time Caroline sees him screaming, her father decides to throw him in the trash. Alexei and the rest of the group know what happened, and they go out to search for him in the trash cans, but they can't find him, so they decide to go home. In Alexei's house, she sees her father bringing a bride similar to Chucky from online. Her name is Tommy, and she informs the rest of the group of what happened. They ask her to watch her sister's room well. And at night, Caroline's father enters to check on her. Suddenly, they encounter a deformed doll. So he goes out and throws it in the rubbish bin, and you see him and keep waiting for the rest of the group, until they gather to kill him, and they arrive and put them in a bag, and they keep hitting him until they break him completely. Finally, he dies, and the group's nightmare ends. On the second day, the mayor makes a meeting for the people of the city, and the one who is the same as the mother, and then the school comes to talk about what is happening, and the presenter of the party prefers to call her. But suddenly her head blooms while she is cut off in front of everyone, and Chucky blooms from behind the curtain, and whoever remains is able to transfer his soul to the body of the new doll, and opens the curtain on the principal while she is sitting on the chair with her head cut off. And everyone collapses out of fear, and the investigator tries to uncover the killer, and she makes sure every time that Sheik is innocent. One day at school, the investigator comes to arrest the neighborhood school on charges of killing the principal, and after they find her fingerprints everywhere, and they also discover that she has a past in committing crimes. Devin, Alex and Jake decide that they try to get rid of Chucky as fast as possible, and every one of them thinks about how to kill him, and they read reports of someone named Andy, who has been charged with murder. But then they replied that the doll was the killer, and that's why he entered a mental institution, and they read about the news of his escape from the hospital a short time ago. So they try to reach his number. Finally, they contact him, and they tell him about everything that happened. Andy appears standing with his sister, and those who keep trying to search for every part of Chucky's soul to get rid of him. Ultimate, and they know where Chucky is. They are coming and that he is the one who killed their adoptive father and mother, and then the two brothers arrive at a small house in a far place. There, they ask the family to make an inventory of the number of individuals And they see a little girl in the house, and they ask her to bring her toys. And they see among them, so they ready their guns, and before he kills the child, they can kill him and walk away. Thus, they were able to get rid of one of the parts of the soul, and in another place, our daughter blossomed, living together, and they keep committing all the murders they want in the house. It appears that one of them has part of a soul, but the one with the body returns to its normal state as soon as she sees blood, and her name remains Becca, but by the time she regains consciousness, she notices that she is paralyzed. This is because her movement is linked only to the appearance of Charles's soul, which can return to her at any time. Charles's girlfriend notices that he is changing, so you stab him in the leg, but you know that Becca is the one who is there. He takes her to Charles's old house, and the one who killed his mother, and she is content with Becca and leaving her at home until Charles's soul returns to her again. Back to Devon, and whoever reads on the internet is a method through which he can know if someone entered the house or not. And this is by tying a very thin rope on all the handles of the house in a certain way. Then he ties the end of each rope to a doll in the middle of the house, and as soon as the world moves, this means that someone tried to open one of the doors. Meanwhile, Junior's mother is blooming while she is at home with her husband and son. Suddenly, she confesses to them that she has cancer, and it's in its last phase. And her family collapses, but they promise her that they will stay by her side no matter what. Then Junior's mother goes to the psychiatrist, and there you tell her that she told her family, but Fatal only needs one thing, and that is that she decided not to get treatment and complete her life with her family, and then she leaves the doctor's office, and Junior is waiting for her in the car, and his mother looks at him from the noise of the building, and suddenly he blooms behind her and spits towards her a small shopping car, so Junior's mother falls from the noise and descends on the car that Junior is in, and he sees his mother dead before his eyes. Jake and the rest of the group find out what happened, and they are sure that he is the reason. They guess that he wants to kill Jake, and that is why he is trying to destroy his entire family. So they decide that they are waiting for the time when Junior and his father will go out to the funeral. And then the plan that Devon saw on the internet. Devon and Jake sit in front of the doll to watch its movements, and Alexa looks upstairs to see if anyone is coming from outside the house. Suddenly, he meets the doll. While it is moving, suddenly they hear the sound of something breaking and know that you are crying at home, so they try to turn on it, but he comes out and tries to encourage her to kill Jake, who wanted to kill her, and Jake blooms behind Chucky. Devon is standing behind the door with his taser ready to stop Chucky from moving. In the room, Alexei prefers to distract Chucky and his co-convincing partners over killing Jake. Suddenly, Jack attacks Chucky, but he can avoid it and hit him with a knife in the leg. And then he runs away, but Devon can electrocute him, and he keeps trying to electrocute him again, but the taser peeps, and he suspects that he is running away. Devon is surprised that Chucky didn't try to kill him. Suddenly, he hears the voice of the investigator as she enters the house, and she is the same as Devon's mother. Suddenly, Chucky attacks her and knocks her off the stairs. Unfortunately, her neck is broken and she dies, and Devon collapses, seeing his mother dead before his eyes, and he can suspect that he is fleeing outside the house on the second day of the funeral for the investigator and Junior's mother. He decides not to continue with what they are doing after what happened, and Alex says that it is also sequential and that she will not be able to continue, and he will remain alone. Suddenly, a car comes with the same woman she was with, and the first time she sees Jake's father, she consoles him, then kisses him and walks away, and Junior sees what is happening and thinks that his father was cheating on his mother, and he returns home collapsed. At this time, he decides to run away from home, and this is after he feels that everyone around him sees that he is the reason for what happened to them. He takes money from his uncle's incentive and goes to the train station. At this time, he also decided to run away from his uncle's house, and he was still fulfilling his needs, and suddenly he sees old news about Charles and the incident that happened to him in his childhood home. He decides to go home and avenge his mother's death, and in Junior's house, Chucky appears, who can control Junior's mind and hate him in his father, and it makes him think that his father was the reason for his mother's suicide after betraying her. And that is why he Must die, and Junior really decides to kill his father. Suddenly, he hears his voice while he is coming to the room, and he is drunk, and the door of the room opens, and he asks Junior to talk, but Chucky speaks in his place and tells him that he is the reason for his mother's death, and that he was a stupid person and did not appreciate her presence in their lives, so they tell the father that his mother is the one who is weak and has no will or determination, and that he is like him, so he gets angry with Junior and hits his father until he falls on the ground and kills him in the world, and he is very happy to join Junior as his and sees the role of who, and at this time he will remain. Andy's brothers are moving home, Jake. On the way, they stop at a gas station to buy things. Suddenly, he enters the car, locks himself in, and decides that he will move without his sister, and this is because he is afraid that she will die like their father and mother, and they arrive and see who decides that he will turn into a killer, and at this time he arrives at Charles's old house. There he hears Becca's voice, and what remains is part of her soul, and Becca hears him and asks him to help her and dismantle her and really dismantle her, but suddenly a soul returns again and he attacks me and ties him to the chair instead of him. At this time, Jack remains in suddenly. He sees a delivery man with him in Damietta who looks like Chucky, so Jake pays the full amount to the delivery man in return for knowing the place he was going to deliver to her, and then he returns to Alexis' house, and there they discover that the delivery address is the same as Charles's house, and suddenly they see a post on an account. Devin is located at the same address. They decide to leave as soon as possible. At Charles's house, he finds himself strapped to a chair, surrounded by a large number of Chucky-like dolls, and it remains all in it from Charles's departure. At Alexis' house, she and Jake are waiting for the car that will take them to Charles's house, where Devin will be. Together, they think about why Chucky incites them to kill instead of killing himself, and there is certainly a reason for him to desist from this effort. Suddenly, they hear a voice coming from the kitchen, and they remember the doll that he brought from, and the doll blooms in front of them while she is holding a knife, and suddenly an unknown person comes and hits the doll with a gun and kills him, and it turns out that she is Andy's sister. And who tells them that Chucky spreads more widely everything that incites an innocent person to kill, and then he will have an entire army of dolls, and that the only one who can move to her is a puppet, so they think about who could be the innocent person that Chucky incited to kill someone. They betray Alex that Junior killed his father. Meanwhile, Andy's sister is making tea, and the one who drinks from it as soon as he and Jake get drugged and sleep. Andy's sister tells them that she is saving their friend, and at this time, Charles's girlfriend arrives at his house, and then he comes with Junior, who remains to join Chucky's club, and then the doorbell rings, and Charles's friend opens to make the delivery, and she charges with him everything that remains in it, part of Charles's soul, and this is to be distributed in all of America, and then she puts heat bombs in front of the door, and this is so that the door does not open the house. It all explodes and Charles's girlfriend comes out with Junior, who has a batch of them, and at this time Andy gets to Charles's house and kills again, and this is because he is still moving even though his neck is cut, and frees Andy. Devin and asks him to get out of the house quickly, and at this time, Andy's sister arrives and opens the door and it explodes the whole house, but Devin manages to escape, and the next day he wakes up, and they see the news of the explosion of Charles's house, and they know that Devin is dead, and Jake goes home sad, but suddenly Devin appears in front of him and tells him that they need the Duma car, which will be distributed to all of America, and they think about where you will be. They speculate that Chucky may be taking advantage of the presence of a large number of people at the mayor's charity event that day, and they go there as soon as possible. And at the party, the mayor will keep saying her word, and Alexis brought her Wally. Suddenly, she hears Junior's voice behind her, so he entered the hall and saw him, and Junior keeps calling her until they go far away. At this time, the mayor announces that she will host an Oscar-winning character, which would be the same as Charles's friendship, and her name is Jennifer, and who decides to donate a truck full of children's hospitals in the United States of America, and the residents greet her and be very happy, and then they enter and complete the party in the hall while watching a movie, and Jennifer gives Caroline one of the dolls. And Caroline is very happy and takes her with her while she is watching a movie. Meanwhile, Alex reaches Junior and Chucky, each of whom is holding a knife and trying to convince her to join them, but Alex refuses and begs Junior to turn back from the path he is on. They encourage Chucky to kill her. Instead, Junior attacks Alexion Chucky and kills him, but before he dies, he can kill Junior and they both die. And in the movie theater, he goes down again under the chairs and kills as many people as possible, and all the people are afraid and run quickly out of the hall. Not knowing who is killing them, they arrive and see Caroline while she is alone, so he takes it and calls Jake on Chucky, and he challenges him to confront him, and it blooms and attacks Jake, and leave it in his leg, but he can handle it, and he kills him with his own hands without using any weapon, and Alexis comes and learns that her father died with a large number of residents, for a movie party, mourning for all those who died, and then they think of the doll car. But suddenly they see Andy, and whoever blooms is still alive, and he rides the puppet car in front of them to get rid of it. But on his way, he breaks one from the buzzing dolls and threatening him, he moves in the way you will tell him. What will you kill? And the series ends after you complain about the ability to kill more than one person, and his spirit is spread over dozens of dolls that will be distributed all over America.